What's good, y'all? My name is Dylan Green, and this is Real Notes, a space dedicated to blurring the cultural and artistic lines between rap and film. I'm here to chop it up with everyone from rappers and producers to journalists and video directors about their relationship to movies and how, if at all, film inspires their craft. My guest this week is South Carolina-born producer, vocalist, and composer Contour. We took a critical look at Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and the MCU, and spoke about The Brave Little Toaster, the 2001 Japanese film Pulse, the pros and cons of Letterboxd, the art of film scoring, combining sample-based beats and traditional instruments to find his sound, and the creative process behind his latest album, Onwards. Come fuck with it. What's cracking, everybody? Welcome back. Real Notes. I think this is episode. I don't. Why am I thinking about numbering episodes again? It's been like 50 episodes since I've done this shit. I think this is 81. Yeah, I think this is episode. Or no, 82. It's 82. It's 82. I'm gonna be bad at myself if I don't get it right. But Dylan Green, CineMasai, got a lot of names, do a lot of shit, run around. Not for much longer, because we were just talking about it off camera, but it's almost hibernation time after like 2 more, maybe 3 more shows. I need to get rest. But anyway, we're not here to talk about being tired. We're here to talk about wonderful music and movies with someone who's really, really wonderful, been killing shit for a few years. Their new album Onwards is out now and has been soundtracking my mornings for quite a bit. Got a vocalist, a producer, composer, arranger, very, very, very smart individual.
Oh, beautiful.
Nah, you're smart. Smart. We got Contour, Kari in the building today. Thank you so much for being here. Like, it means a lot.
Yeah, of course. Also, his album was correct. That was good.
Just making
yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, nah, thank you for being here. Yeah, nah, it's like I said before, Onwards it's just like, it's really been something that's kind of centered me over the course of the last what's it been, like a month, maybe 2 months, almost
month and a half, something like that.
Month and a half. Yeah, like it's just been very centering for me, and I'm just like, there's so much to break down, but first and foremost, this is a movie and music place. So I'm gonna ask you the first question I ask everybody who comes on here. What was the last movie or TV show you watched that you had a strong opinion about?
There's not a worse time you could ask me this question. The last movie that I saw was the new Black Panther movie.
And how'd you like the new Black Panther movie?
As somebody who is critical of Hollywood and Marvel and the Pentagon industrial cinema complex, I can't say I'm really a fan. Like, it was entertaining enough, and there were good parts of the movie, but it's really just another propaganda film.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of the stuff that they try to do to make it feel like it's doing something else is like kind of insulting when you really get into the subtext of a lot of what is going on in the film. That's the short version of my opinion on it.
Was there one specific moment? Because I can think of let me just say, I liked it. I'm a Marvel person, but I'm also very critical of the pro-military propaganda and like the Pentagon. It's difficult being a Marvel fan sometimes. But was there any one specific moment that really like hit you in that respect?
It's really the central plot line. The exposition of the movie is this very like tongue-in-cheek, like, gotcha from Angela Bassett's character to the UN that's supposed to be like colonialism aware and neo-colonialism aware. And then rather than anybody actually recognizing or responding to France or the US as colonial powers like they hint at, we get to watch two groups of marginalized people kill each other for 3 hours, which is like, it's just like a big, like the whole exposition is just this big magic trick to make you think that there's like a self-awareness that there is actually treating out.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. Like the whole, because it's like it's hard for me to watch. It's hard for me to watch everything going on between Wakanda and Talokan and just not think like, yeah, it's like, why are y'all fighting each other? Like, just like y'all could both go after the US right now. Like they spent the last movie talking so much about how, like, I mean, like, Wakanda has vibranium. They could they could just rain down on everybody. And like, not even in the sense that Namor was talking about, but just like, I don't know, man. It's just, I'm with you. I'm with you is basically all I'm trying to say. And just like, the movie to me was entertaining enough that it didn't bother me as much as it might have if the movie kind of sucked.
Mm-hmm.
But I get it. And like, not only just that, but like, sometimes it's really easy to get caught up in the whole T'Challa and Ramonda and Shuri story. But like, Wakanda is still an imperial power, and like, it wouldn't like
No, it's not. How is Wakanda an imperial power? What other nation or smaller nation have they based their wealth on globally?
never mind. I take that back. You're right. Forget I said anything. Forget I said anything. I'm wrong. Um, nah, never mind. But hmm, I just, you're really making me think about this now.
I'm
And I'm
glad
just,
because I mean, like, I'm a big part of my relationship to film is like being very into like black film and like especially like US black film, at least at this stage in my learning, and like its relation to, I guess, our position historically and otherwise. And so this, and not even just black film, but just like what film is used for, what media is used for, what its role and purposes and abilities are like in culture and politically. And Marvel, yeah, I mean, I'm really not going to get into a Marvel rant, but that foregrounding is like why I feel so strongly about it.
I feel you. I mean, like, that's perfectly valid. Like, I really, I really appreciate Ryan Coogler on just like a pure raw filmmaking level.
Mm.
And I love, and you're like, I love the fact that he like ascended so fast through the ranks, because like, he made Fruitvale Station, he made Creed, and then they put him in charge of Black Panther. And I think it's I think the stuff that he's done on that level has been really wonderful. But like, once you get into the Disney Marvel shit, it's like it's hard to not fall into those rhythms. Like, you can only be so revolutionary in that sense, you know?
I don't think you could be revolutionary at all in the
Yeah.
Marvel Disney complex
Yeah.
unless you literally found a way to make something that was the complete opposite of what they wanted and actually get it distributed, which you couldn't do. So
Yeah.
I stand on the first thing I said, which is that it's impossible.
Right. Yeah. No, no, no. I agree. I think like, this is Disney we're talking about. Like, Disney, like, I think about this all the time, but like, they basically own that entire plot of Orlando that Disney World stands on. Like, it's like a few sanctions away from being its own sovereign nation. Like, they do foul shit all over the place. So, it's like, that's like, once you're there, it's kind of it's kind of a wrap for anything that could really make a kind of like real difference in that sense.
And it's also like when I see a film like Black Panther, or a franchise rather, that's backed or produced by a monopolistic media conglomerate such as Marvel Disney, my question is, what is the story from a filmmaker that is not tied to the ideologies of this corporation that we're not getting? Like, what is the actual story about a sovereign, like speculative, fictional Black nation, African nation that could actually have revolutionary potential that we're not going to see because those resources and that part of the market is being saturated by this film? Or is there even a part of the market for it, which there's clearly not, because this is the film that we're getting that pretends to be in that part of the market?
Right. Yeah, it can be a lot to just like, because obviously Black Panther and Wakanda aren't the only two examples of even just Afrofuturist cities in this sense, but just like, once again, it's Disney and they just own everything and they're just gonna bulldoze. That's just what they're here for. I thought it was entertaining, but all of this is very valid and something that everyone should always think about. This shit is like packaged and sold. Like, we just have to remember that these things are being packaged and sold to us sometimes, and it can be very easy to forget that. Like, especially with everything going on with Chadwick Boseman, and obviously rest in peace. He was incredible.
Rest in peace. And also, I think that they really kind of used him as an emotional manipulator to get the audience to sympathize with the story that they were selling.
Oh, sure,
Like,
absolutely.
like obviously on one half it's like great, they're taking a moment to pay tribute to this actor who was a part of this franchise, but then at the other sense it's like, oh, they're really kind of forcing an emotional response on the audience right now at the very beginning of this thing, so that the audience is more emotionally open and vulnerable to whatever else is about to happen in the overall plotline.
Yeah, that's like, I kind of expected that, honestly. Like, there's really, like, especially considering how even though he's not here anymore, like pretty much every little plot element of the movie either revolves around someone's remembrance of him or something that he did. Like, it's like, I don't want to say that. I mean, like, he's not like you can't really say that he's like the main character at all, because he's not really a character. He's more being used as like a symbol. But like, he he's he's everyone's motivation still, in one sense or another, which is interesting. Especially considering that, like, I'm getting lost in my thoughts right now. I'm like really, really,
Okay, that's a
really,
good thing.
yeah, it is a good thing. I we don't have to dwell too much more on this, but I did really, one thing about it that I did really appreciate, even though as we already kind of established, they're kind of playing in our faces. I did like that one of the only white dudes in the whole movie kind of, I can't really say he like defected from the US government, but like everything that happened with Ross just kind of like, can't even really, I mean, like, I guess in a sense he kind of went off the grid, but it was nice to see them at least like perform him being like, you know what, let me go help out Wakanda, like, just like, because
Well,
I
why
mentioned,
is
so, sorry.
why are we even in this position where this extremely powerful African country exists, and because they're so allegiant to this bureaucratic diplomatic relationship with the imperial powers of the world, that we have to be happy about this white savior-esque character being like, yeah, I'll help these blacks out this time. and it's supposed to be, oh, so much sacrifice to help the blacks. What a great character. And I'm like, first of all, wouldn't no white person and no government ever even do that? Second of all,
Yeah.
which is why it's propaganda. Second of all, the story really don't even need that shit. Like
Yeah.
the character exists as a part of the propaganda. Like that's the only reason that plot line exists. Because otherwise, there would be no good white person in the story, which would not be acceptable.
Yeah. Once again, you're right. And, like like all of that taken in, I all of that taken in, I appreciated the fact that like you have Shuri, you have Ramonda, you have Okoye, and you have Denai Guerrera's character's name is escaping me right now. Okoye. There we go. Just like having like having the four of them be like outside of the fact that T'Challa's presence kind of looms over everything. I just love the fact that they decided to make Black Panther an ensemble piece that really attempts to focus around all the women in the story. Because it felt I'm trying to choose my words very carefully here.
Mm-hmm.
It felt good. It felt good to see that, considering that the franchise had already kind of set itself up to have the four of them step up in different ways, even if Chadwick hadn't passed away. Like it didn't feel out of place. It didn't feel like, not that it would have either way, but it just made me really happy to see them all do their thing. All four of them were great. And hearing Lupita Nyong'o speak French and Creole was beautiful.
Yeah. I really try and remain focused on like possibility. And so I'm like, really, it's important to me to not be happy with things in general, but like to not accept things and not ask the question of like, okay, but what could this have been? Like, all four of these actresses exist outside of this franchise.
Mm-hmm.
What could a movie incorporating all four of these very talented actresses operating as characters with a similar level of agency been that was not tied up in imperial propaganda?
Yeah.
It's important for me to remember that is a possible thing that also could have happened, and that there's a reason that that's not what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And I appreciate you checking me on that, because these are all really important things to consider. Like I try to think about them as much as I can, but especially as I get older, I realize that like it's very, very easy. It's very easy to get caught up in entertainment, and it's also good and healthy to acknowledge things as entertainment, because like we need to have fun. But at the same time, like,
and I should say, I'm also not like, I'm not by any means of the opinion that we shouldn't consume media that's problematic. Like I think it's okay.
Yeah.
That like it's fine. Like, and liking things is fine. But I agree, like it's important to have the critical dialogue about what it is that we're liking and why we like it and how we can enjoy it and still stay grounded in understandings of what's possible.
Right. Yeah, no, the nuance is important. And I just appreciate that. It can be difficult to have those conversations with people, because we tend to section things off into like, oh, this is the thing just to go to have fun. Like, oh, this is the thing just to break it down critically and intellectually. Like you can do both, and that can be great. Like I just appreciate that. I just appreciate that. And for you, kind of running back to, you already kind of mentioned your fascination with Black film in particular, and like obviously our history is so rich there. But for you, what's the first movie experience you can remember having? Like, it could be at the theater, it could be at your cousin's house, wherever. Like,
Damn, that's hard. The first movie experience I remember having is not in the theater. I think it would have been watching one of the Brave Little Toaster movies in my living room at like age 6,
oh man.
something like that.
Oh man. Do you remember which one? Because I think there's two of them, right?
I think it's Goes to Mars because it's the one where that air conditioner dies in the first 15 minutes of the movie and it's
Yeah.
traumatizing.
Mm.
It's such a dark scene to, to be so early in a kids movie. Like,
Yeah, nah, I remember he looked so sad too. Like, he like short circuited and just like,
mhm.
oh, oh no, my brain. Because between that and I forget which Brave Little Toaster movie it was in, but there's one of them where like the toaster has a dream about like a fireman clown, and like the clown like smiles at him and shit. And just like tells him to run, like that and the air conditioner dying are like the two things I remember about the Brave Little Toaster. I haven't seen either movie in like at least 15 years, but like, yeah, there's just something about those. There's something about that moment specifically, the one that you just mentioned, that's just like hearing you say that just made my skin crawl.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I loved those movies. Those were like some of my first favorites.
Yeah. Yeah, no, just like the whole idea of household appliances coming to life, just like a toaster and just like, I think about it now, like it took me. Did you recognize that the electric blanket was supposed to be an electric blanket the whole time? Because I didn't know what the fuck that
No, I
was.
don't know what I thought that nigga was. I thought he was like a lamp or something. I don't know what I thought he was.
Yeah, like it's just like, because like I saw, because like I didn't have an electric blanket, so I didn't know what that was, and it kind of felt a little like, I don't know, but like
That's
I
what
looked
it
it up years later, and I just thought to myself like, what was that supposed to be? And it was like an electric blanket, and I was like, oh, okay, like I'd never seen that before, so
They had just run out of ideas for appliances. They were like, we need a fourth character, and they were like, an electric blanket, and they were like, sure.
yeah, no, because you couldn't have done like, yeah, you can't really do a blender because well, I mean, like the vacuum moved around and the vacuum wasn't plugged in, right? They could have done a blender. They
I don't
wanted to
think
get
none of them
bold.
niggas was plugged in. They were all unplugged, just running around.
Right, yeah, yeah, right. The toaster was unplugged too. They could have gotten real bold and got like a fridge. Like, I always wonder why they didn't get the fridge involved. Like, that would have, I don't know. I feel like having somebody big around would have made things kind of maybe not easier, because they were going on like adventures and shit. I don't know, but like it would have been cool
That
to just
fridge would
have
have got
like,
left behind somewhere.
just
It would
like
have been traumatic moment number 2.
it's like free to the fridge. I have no idea. Did they all have names, or were
Damn
they
it.
just like toaster, blanket? I don't remember if they had names.
Wait, maybe they didn't have names. I don't know. We talking earliest movie memories, so
Right. Shit. No, that's fair. So as you get older and you start to, like watch more things and like experience more life, was there a movie that kind of made you was there a movie that you kind of stopped and saw and helped you appreciate like the art of movie, or not even so much the art of movie making, but just like just something that really made you like stop and be like, wow, like this is something that I'm like appreciating as something that's more than just entertainment, like something that really touched you on any level, really. It could be artistic, it could be just like, oh, I really felt that shit. Like,
I feel like there are a lot of movies that this is true for, that I've encountered at like different stages, like that have allowed me to appreciate a different aspect of film that I hadn't been able to appreciate like beforehand. Like, I think maybe the first one for film, like overall, might have been something really simple like Inception or something when I was like 14. And just being like, oh, I didn't know this level of complexity of story could exist in a thing, which obviously, like, if I watched Inception today, I would be like, all right. But
yeah.
it's like stuff like that, or like, discovering like something like Daughters of the Dust, and like thinking about like, oh, like slow cinema, like that is concerned primarily with documentation of like a cultural history. Like, this is like a real thing. Like, this is an application of cinema beyond entertainment. Or like, I've had that with so many things. Like, I've had that, or even like most recently, for a long time, I was not really a horror fan. I wouldn't really say I'm a horror fan now, but I recently I collaborated with a filmmaker who was working on a short horror film. And so I was scoring, so I was like, okay, well, I need to do research, so I need to watch some horror and figure out like what I like in a horror score and what I can, draw from to write the score. And I ended up watching this 2009 Japanese horror film called Pulse, which was about it's about like this town, and people keep being discovered like having committed suicide, like in their apartments or like in various places.
I've seen
And
this movie.
okay, so there's this like website that they keep going to, and so the main character, like, there's like a double plot line, which like one follows somebody investigating this website, and then it's like another pair of girls, or like a girl who's like basically just seeing, like, kind of in the center of a string of these suicides that are like following her, kind of. But the movie, it's not like jump scary, and it's not like I learned that what I don't like about horror is like the manufactured, and really I learned that this is something I don't like in film at all, which is like something I touched on when we were talking about Black Panther. I like don't like manufactured emotions in film. Obviously, because films are things that are made, any emotion in a film you could technically say is manufactured, but I don't like things that are very like heavy-handedly, like manipulatively trying to force a specific reaction on you in a specific moment, which is exactly what jump scares do. And it's why I don't like jump scares, and I don't like that so much of like modern US horror is centered around the jump scare, because it's really just this like, it's this manipulative, like forced reaction that I'm not into. And so what I really liked about Pulse is that it's really like there's like not any of that, and it's really not even like centered. The plot is not actually about the suicides. Like, it's not a, oh, race to the clock, like they got to figure out what's going on. Like, it's actually like a really, really profound exploration and meditation on grief and loneliness, and how like anybody can all of a sudden be surrounded by this feeling of grief or loneliness, and that you can't really control, like there's not control over who that happens to, or like how, or even whether they can actually survive it or be supported through it by the people around them. And I just thought it was so poetic, like the way that the film explored those themes. And so that long-windedly was my most recent like, oh, horror can really be this much deeper thing that's not actually about like the scare or the horrifying concept.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember when I first saw Pulse. I think I might have seen it. I think I might have seen it when it first came out.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's two things I remember about it. A was that it was people were if I remember correctly, people were committing suicide because of things they were seeing on like computer screens and stuff like that, right?
Yep.
And like they were like spirits or like entities coming out of them like on like some ring shit. And
Mhm.
then like the end, I remember the end of the movie, they figure out that like they just need to like abandon their technology, and one of them just goes and like fucks off to like just like a cabin somewhere in like I think it might have been Ireland. I think somebody mentioned like we're going to Ireland or something.
The last 20 minutes of that film kind of really go off the rails.
Yeah.
I remember being like, what is going, like, I remember like 80% of the movie, I'm just like following, like, wow, this is really, really like profound, blah, blah, blah. And then like the last 15 minutes, I just remember being like, what is going on? But yeah, it's something like that that happened.
Yeah. And then like yeah, because like I think whoever it was had been out there for a minute, and then somebody comes to visit them and they're like, oh, take a look at my new phone. And then it's just like, no, no, put the phone away. And then that was it. I've been meaning to rewatch it since then, but like,
Wait, that might be a different Pulse.
oh, damn, shit. What year did you say that the one you were talking
It's
about came
either
out?
'09 or '07. You know what? Let me go ahead and just pull Letterboxd out and be 100% sure.
Uh,
2001. It's
oh
2001.
yeah, oh yeah, I'm thinking of a completely different Pulse. My fault. It's also a horror movie that came out in '06. That was yeah, it's completely different. I'm sorry.
I know which one you mean. I haven't seen that one.
I liked it. But yeah,
It was
yeah, this
probably based on the same. It was probably based on the first movie or the source material for the first movie.
no, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure you're right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah, it says it right here. It's a yeah, yeah. See, it's a J horror remake. Damn. I got. That's crazy.
You gotta hit the OG. You gotta hit the original.
See, that's crazy because because I love all horror, but Japanese horror was something that I was really into kind of like around the time that the remake of The Ring and the remake of The Grudge came out, like you go out and see Ringu, and you go out and or at least I went out and tried to find as many of the originals as I could. My favorite was I don't want to I don't want to get too far away from your point, but my favorite was The Eye. The original version of The Eye is really incredible if you haven't seen it.
I haven't.
Um it's long story short, it's about a woman it's about a blind woman who gets new eyes, and she can see, but she can also see ghosts. Like that's just the drawback, is that she starts seeing ghosts all over the place. And it's also an interesting and really creepy meditation on grief, probably in a different way than Pulse.
Right.
But I think but being like to your original point about horror about horror kind of having those having that aspect to it. Um that's that's something that I've kind of come to appreciate a lot more as I've gotten older, because like I'm a Splatterfest person. I just saw that Terrifier 2 movie that just came out like over Halloween.
Mhm.
It's literally about nothing but gore. Somebody gets mashed potatoes shoved into their face. It's really fucked up. But like I I'm sorry, but but I like but the last time but oh wait, no, what am I talking about? I just saw Bones and All. Have you heard about Bones and All that just
I've been
came
hearing
out?
about it. I haven't
It's
seen that.
it's I didn't I had no idea. I had no idea what it was going to be about, outside of the fact that it's just like cannibal teenagers on the run, and that's basically what it is. And that's probably the last horror film that I saw that really touched me. In like and it's like and it's mostly because it's like a mix of like, it's like a horror film but also like a romantic drama. And they did a really they did a really interesting job of mixing the two genres together. Like it's like I've been thinking about it so much since I saw it, and like I really enjoyed what I saw, but I'm still trying to figure out like why I enjoyed it. And I don't and like I'm not 100% there yet, outside of the fact that like the two characters dynamic is really, 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 really well done. And there's gore effects, but it's not like crazy overdone in like a Splatterfest Terrifier 2 kind of way.
Mhm.
It's really just like these two kids are cannibals for whatever reason. They find each other, they no longer feel alone, and they have to deal with the fact that they're not the only person like that in the world no more. And it to me it felt like a really to me it felt like a really thoughtful and even soulful take on that particular kind of horror movie that I haven't seen in a while, you
Mhm.
know, and it really it stuck with me. It's been I think I saw it maybe like a week and a half ago, and
Mhm.
I've been thinking about it damn near every day. So that's
I'll have to watch it.
mm. Also I like don't get Timothy Chalamet. I don't see why people like him so much, but
I don't know that
he's
I've ever seen a film that he's in.
I'm trying to think of
Somehow.
some stuff he's done.
I have a tendency of avoiding. I have a bit of a contrarian streak, so sometimes I avoid, not on some like I don't want to consume mainstream media, but sometimes I it's really the like I really want to consume things without having any opinions like already put in my brain about them. So I just will wait a really long time before I watch things that people are talking about so I can like really form my own opinion, just like have a blank slate. But then I end up forgetting to ever come back to stuff.
I respect that. Like he I think I saw Call Me by Your Name and I was like he's good in this. But then everything else I've seen, like I'm like okay, it's just like okay, like not even that it was a fluke, but I'm just like
Mhm.
he's a white dude. They come a dime a dozen. Like it's not the end of the world if I'm not fucking with Timothy Chalamet. But like like watching him in Bones and All, I was like, oh, I get it. Like I see why people like him so much. Like okay,
Mhm.
cool, it works. And Taylor Russell, who's like she's basically the protagonist of the whole movie. Like she runs off with the whole thing. Like she's been in other movies before, but like this is the one where it's like people are gonna see this and they're gonna be throwing bigger roles at her. So like it was they did a great job. You know, like they just did a great job at the casting, and it just felt really I just real I just really appreciated how deep they took it, you know, without without it getting like too deep,
Mhm.
because there was like you know, like we were talking earlier about like thinking about what could have been. I was thinking about how that could have been like way worse than it actually was. So it was cool to it's all it's always cool to kind of be on the other side of that and be like this could have been so much worse. You know,
Yeah.
um but anyway, I really want to see the original Pulse. It sounds great. I just I thought I'd seen the original one this whole time and I didn't.
It's a gorgeous movie.
And you said it was from '01, right?
Yeah, oh well.
Man. And you mentioned Letterboxd earlier, which is something that I don't think I've ever brought up on this podcast, but I use it pretty obsessively. I log every movie I watch. Um, when did you start using Letterboxd, and what is it about Letterboxd that you really what is it about Letterboxd that you like? Because I feel like it's a very you got to be a very specific kind of moviegoer to like really fuck with Letterboxd like that, you know?
It's really just help because I started using it in 2020 when I started watching a lot more films specifically for the purpose of like research and like development of my musical projects or other projects. So it's primarily just really useful as like a research like organizational tool and
Right.
like film discovery tool. Um I know some people get like make it their whole personalities with like reviewing and stuff. I review stuff from time to time, but it's all like I think it's just personally helpful to catalog my watching, like make connections between the things I'm watching and like discover things. and like also have like a journal of like what my attitudes about things are over time. Because I can revisit something I watched in 2020 and look at a review of it and be like, why did I think that? But then I know like this is where my head was at this specific period of time, like generally,
Right.
which is also helpful.
Have there two questions. First one, has there been a movie that you watched since you started logging in 2020 that you've gone back and thought, why did I feel that? Like, what was the last time, or has that happened to you?
I'm sure it has. I don't know specifically, but I bet if we keep talking and I go through and I just look at some of my reviews, I'll definitely be able to find one where I'm like, hmm.
Cause what's it called? For me, I
Or even just like ratings. Sometimes I'll like go back and be like, you gave that movie a what? And I'll be
yeah.
like, no, you were it.
Oh yeah, I definitely gone back and like fixed a couple ratings. Like I've turned a couple 3.5s to twos, and I've turned some 2.5s to some threes. You know, it's like rating systems are interesting to me, because I just like, you know, just like as a writer, I've just always been of the mind to just like put it all in the review and let that speak for itself. You know, like that's just kind of how I've always been. But you know, like like ratings of course have their place and all that. I just like, it's just like never the first thing that comes to mind for me. Like when I'm watching something, I'm just thinking like, how does this make me feel? How do I think this shot was composed? How do I feel like this? What do I feel like this actor brought to this scene? Like, you know, like like does everything work together as a whole? And then I just kind of take all those thoughts, and like the last thing I think about is a rating. You know, like it's never like at the forefront of my mind type
A
shit, you
lot of
know?
times I won't even rate stuff right away or I'll forget to like usually I put all of my watches in a list at the end of the year of like everything I've watched. And a lot of times I'll have to like retroactively rate for the sake of like that list having some kind of sense to it. Because a lot of times like I agree, like I'll finish watching something and be like, I don't have an opinion on a rating for this. Like I was just watching it. So
Yeah, it's tough because I said all of that, but at the same time, I feel like obligated to do it. It's so weird. So like I'll like, there are some times where I'll force myself to put a rating on it, which is why I tend to go back and think like, that 3.5 is more like a 2.5. You know, like that's like the rating is always the part where I second guess myself. Like the actual like opinion and like me kind of sifting through how I felt about just everything on like a technical level, and even just like on an emotional, or you know, depending on the circumstance, manipulation level. Like if
mhm.
it's, you could, yeah, because like if the, you know, like if the movie, cause like to me, like if a movie does a good job of if the movie does a good job of making me feel a certain way, that movie did its job. You know, like more often than not, unless it's like really bad, or like the writer or the director or the actors or the DP or whoever just didn't have a grasp on what they were doing. Like more often than not, like you were saying before, all of that's really intentional. And if those feelings hit me and make me forget about shit I didn't like, it's like, oh, okay, then it did its job, you know? But
Mhm.
it's weird. Like the whole, yeah, I could talk about that for hours, but it's just I'm always really interested to see how other people kind of go about like rating and writing about movies, especially since I've really been diving into Letterboxd over the course of the past. I think I also started using it in 2020, like around COVID time is when I first heard about it, because everybody was just at home and just logging movies. So, you know, like
Yeah.
the utility of that wasn't lost on me, you know? So what's it called? Just lost my train of thought. But yeah, so like that's so that's you so that's a bit of you with movies. So like let's jump over to music real quick. Like when did I can imagine that music's been a part of your life for a grip, but like when did music really when did music like really become more than just like a thing that was just when did it become more than just a thing you listen to and a thing that you like really started to live in and experience?
When I was a teenager, probably. Um, I was a very depressed teenager and was not particularly adept at relating to the people around me. So I spent a lot of like my adolescence being just very immersed in whatever music I was listening to as a means of like relating to my own emotion, especially before I had like language to understand my emotions in the way that I can understand them now.
Right.
So that's probably one.
What were you listening to at that time? What was the stuff that was really you were really gravitating towards?
A lot of rap and a lot of indie rock mainly. This was like the height of like the blog era, so
Hmm.
you can probably imagine.
You a Charles Hamilton person or not?
Not quite, not Charles Hamilton.
Yeah.
More like Joey Badass and Danny Brown
Yeah.
and MF Doom, of course.
Yeah. Sounds about right. Yeah.
And Kanye in the aughts.
Yeah. Got to be specific now. Yeah, Kanye and the aughts definitely. Yeah, nah, like that like that era, that blog era was just so special between like between Joey and Danny and like and you're like and just like early Freddie Gibbs, early Nipsey Hussle, Blue, of course, Below the Heavens. And I mean Below the Heavens was like '07, so that was like early blog era. But like,
Yeah.
like just like all just like that whole the blog era, just it's a whole like it's so crazy to be talking about the blog era in the past tense. Like you
Right.
never think you're gonna get there, but like it's what like we're there now. And just like to think about how many different kinds of rappers were like around in the blog era, like between Joey and Danny and all the other people I just mentioned, but like Rocky and Charles Hamilton and Big Crit, and just all like all those people are so different, like it's just crazy to think that all of that came from one specific time period, and just like really
Yeah.
reflect on it. But what about the indie rock shit? I'm really curious about that.
I was really big on like Grizzly Bear, Unknown Mortal Orchestra, Tame Impala. Some of that, I mean, I still listen to Grizzly Bear and Unknown Mortal Orchestra a lot. I don't listen to Tame Impala as much because Kevin Parker's trajectory has lost my interest.
Mhm.
Um, but like, yeah, lots of stuff like that. Um, I'd have to go back and find a playlist to really name everything. The Beach House.
Shout out to Beach House, yeah.
I was a huge Beach House fan. Phanogram. Yeah, I could go on and on.
Did you just because I'm curious because you mentioned Fanagram, did you ever listen to their project they made with Big Boy, that Big Grams EP?
No, I'd fallen off by then.
I checked it out on a whim when it came out, and I liked a bit of it. It's not amazing. Like they're not like a natural pair, but it was like I was like, this is cool. There's like two songs on there that I was like, this is really, really cool. Like if they could have taken they could have taken the energy from those two songs that made that the whole EP, it would have been crazy. Um but yeah,
I can
that
respect
was
people trying things that don't actually make the most sense in reality. I think artists taking risks and experimenting is cool.
yeah, me too. Nah, definitely. Like and it's funny you mentioned that because the first time I ever heard Grizzly Bear was on nope, let me take it back. I was about to fuck up again. I was thinking of Panda Bear. Panda Bear is completely different. Panda
I
Bear
was
is also
listening to
really
Panda
cool,
Bear too.
but yeah. But yeah, I do but yeah, I do fuck with Grizzly Bear. But I was gonna say, I first heard Panda Bear on that on the last Daft Punk album. Um
Oh, the Random Access Memories.
Yeah, I love that album from the first time I heard it. I know a lot of people weren't jacking it when it first came out, but I love Random Access Memories. It's just such
There's
a
some joints on there.
yeah, man. Like just there's yeah, Yeah, I think Motherboard, the song with Giorgio Moroder, and I forget. There's like I just love that album. I'm a big Daft Punk fan, but Panda Bear, I found Panda Bear because of Daft Punk, and then I found Grizzly Bear shortly after
Mm-hmm.
because I was looking for Bear and I found Grizzly Bear and I was like, oh, it was Grizzly Bear.
This would have been what, like 2014,
2014, 13,
Yeah.
because I was still in college. Yeah, because Random Access Memories came out right before I graduated from college. So yeah, definitely. Um and yeah, like for you, so like you have this background of music, you have this background with film, and of course, like, you start getting older and just start moving through life. You had already mentioned it with like you'd already mentioned an example of this specifically with you talking about composing and film scoring, but I feel like that's a little, let me just ask the question. Was there ever a period of time when you kind of saw music and film as two things that complement one another, like before you started composing and film scoring?
I think so. Maybe like not as intentionally, but I definitely like one of the things that was a part of whether I would like a film or not would be like if the soundtrack was good or if like, and obviously like the big thing that's probably changed is what I consider to be a good soundtrack or a good score now.
Right.
But like for example, when I was like a teenager and Scott Pilgrim versus the World came out, like I was like, oh, this movie is crazy. The music in
There
this
you
movie
go.
is.
Oh man, I spent so much time with that Scott Pilgrim soundtrack. I still love the movie, even though it's got problems. But I just it's got a lot of problems. But I love that movie and I love that soundtrack. Those Sex Bomb songs and the one that Brie Larson, the Clash of Demon Head, that Clash of Demon Head song, that year, I don't know why that shit goes crazy to this day. But what was like what what would you consider to be a great soundtrack now? Like like Scott Pilgrim was then. What would be the one thing you would really be on now?
I think Nicholas Bertel's scores are really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think soundtracking. I guess. Okay, are we talking scoring or are we talking soundtracking?
Um, Good question. We could do both if you want, because I mean, like you mentioned like the soundtrack specifically with Scott Pilgrim,
Mhm.
but we could talk about both because both are great. Like there's a difference between like the Scott Pilgrim versus the World soundtrack and then the score that Daft Punk did for the Tron movie. Or like
I never saw that.
the movie itself is fine, but the score is amazing.
Mhm.
They put their ankle in that shit. But anyway, like what would you say is your favorite film score? Because there very much is a difference between a soundtrack and a score.
I really hate that this is my answer because I'll explain why I hate that it's my answer. There's a neo noir film called Chinatown
I know Chinatown.
that has my favorite score. I hate that it's my answer because that film is directed by Roman Polanski, who I do
Yeah,
not endorse in any way.
right. Yeah, me either.
But I really adore the score of that film. It's so good. Another film whose score I love. There are a few. Okay, that I love the Daughters of the Dust score. Um, Reading about how the composer was intentionally interpreting like certain like astrological themes and like aspects of the plot line and characters to create the score. So interesting. I also love the Paris, Texas score a lot.
See, I haven't seen Paris, Texas. I know about it, but it's just one that I never got the chance to like really get to. What
Mhm.
do you know who composed the score? Who composed the score?
But I can't remember the dude's name. He's like a really prolific composer. I'm just gonna keep looking these things up. he's like the reason I can't remember, he scored so much stuff and a lot of it doesn't sound like, a lot of it sounds like way different. Or like some people have like careers where they do just lots of industry, like, very traditional scoring stuff that's like not so much creative as it is just like industry standard. But what is this dude's name? I'm gonna figure this out.
Look up something else while I'm here.
Ry Cooder, that's his name.
Okay, I don't know. I don't know who that is off the top of my head, but I do I do really want to see Paris, Texas. It's actually been on my list for a while. I just never got around to it.
If
But
you like
like,
long, moody, slow stuff, then you'll like it. Which is like one of my big bags of watching. So
yeah, I love long, moody, slow shit. I've been watching shit with my partner, and my partner hates long, moody, slow shit. So I gotta sneak in. I gotta sneak in that. I gotta sneak that shit in on my own. It's
mm-hmm.
it's a very particular kind of like experience watching something like that. But the first like the first film composer who comes to my mind is a guy named Michael Giacchino. He's also somebody who's done like 80,000 different scores and like different kinds of shit. But he worked on the first time I ever recognized him was when I saw Star Trek Into Darkness, funny enough, in 2013, which isn't a good movie, but the score is amazing. Like he's like, I don't know what it is, but it just like really, it really just got under my skin. And like he's scored for like Mission Impossible movies and like Jurassic World and like Medal of
Mm-hmm.
Honor. I think he might have even done a Marvel movie or two. But he's also, let me see what else he's done. He's done a lot. But there's just something so like dynamic about the way that he arranges music, and just like it all sounds familiar, but like it just he really
Oh, he's done a
gets
lot
at
of
what
Disney
makes.
stuff.
He's done a lot of Disney stuff. I think he also just did Werewolf by Night on the Marvel show that I haven't watched yet. But like he's someone whose work is like, he really gets what makes an epic moment epic and what makes an intimate moment intimate. And that kind of goes to the whole like how film and music really complement each other, because like I feel like it's kind of obvious, but it's always worth saying that like music affects the way we take in stuff we watch. Like there's like a difference between watching a film like Star Trek Into Darkness that's got like a score, and like you're supposed to be excited, you're supposed to be sad, and then you watch a movie like No Country for Old Men that has no score, and it's just like the experience of watching a movie with no music is so different. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because there's no telegraphing of like how you're supposed to feel, and it's like it really makes you lock in a different way. you
Mm-hmm.
know like like just because he popped into my head, just like the way that the way that like the score in like a Spike Lee movie, like Do the Right Thing or Mo Better Blues, like
That's
especially
a
Mo
really
Better
good score.
Blues. What?
So that's a really good score.
Yeah, like I just love the fact that Spike really locked in with the Marsalises, and just like had them come and like do the music, like just like the title song in Mo Better Blues is one of my favorite songs I've ever heard in a movie. It's just like it's so short, but it's just got such a nice little it's just, I don't know, it just hits. It just hits for me. But I always imagine what a movie like Mo Better Blues, what Malcolm X or Do the Right Thing would be like without music. Like what would Do the Right Thing be without Fight the Power in it? Or like what would it be like without the little refrain that plays throughout the whole? Because like there's like two specific refrains that play throughout all of Do the Right Thing. Like what would the movie be like without those? You know,
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know, but either way, I'm kind of rambling, sorry. But yeah, I just really appreciate a good score. I appreciate how music can amplify or even sometimes detract from what a movie can do, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And like, and for you, when did music become something more than just a hobby? Like, when was it like, oh, like I'm making this now?
I don't know if there's like a clear moment. Um, I feel like even when it was a hobby, I was obsessed with it in a similar way that I am now. Like, I feel like I was very immersed in the making of it from like the moment that I started doing it. So I
Mhm.
guess the only thing that like changes it is like, you know, having people book you to do things, or like I guess the thing that makes the difference is like people caring about what you're doing. But in my how I've engaged with it, there hasn't really been a moment that was a big pivot or like a big 180 to like, oh, I take it seriously now.
Gotcha. Well, there was I saw you tweeting about this. It might have been a day. It was like a day or two ago. But I
Uh-huh.
saw you tweet. Sometimes I'll be playing piano and think, yeah, you were running those Kingdom Hearts games up, huh? And
Oh,
like, yo, that's such a I love that. That made me laugh when I saw it. And like, talk to me about that moment and talk to me about the score for the Kingdom Hearts games, because like, what is it about those games and that music that just it just like everybody loves, like I don't know, like I love them too, but just like, what is it, what was it about you playing the piano at that moment that made you think of Kingdom Hearts? I'm so
it
curious.
was, yeah, I was just like, I was in the studio and I was just like sitting and like playing around with the piano. And it was some specific like melody that I did that was very like dearly beloved-esque. And I was like, oh, all right, all right. I was like, here you go. And then, and that's when I thought about it. Because there's just this very like deeply emotional, like wistful quality to like specifically the piano writing through a lot of the Kingdom Hearts stuff.
Yeah.
And just like the way that the melodies and chords interact with each other. It's like sound like even like in the energetic moments, there's like kind of like a melancholy aspect to it. It's like very, very dramatic. And I was
Right.
like, all right, you being dramatic as hell right now on this piano.
Yeah, no, that's valid. Because like, if there's any one way to describe those games, like those games are melodramatic as shit. Like, and like it's cut, like it's half the reason I like it. It's basically just like a soap opera with Disney characters and keyblades. Like it's
Mhm.
I and like I you can say that about a lot of JRPGs, but like Kingdom Hearts specifically, like
Yeah,
that's
a soap opera with those elements and nothing anybody says makes sense at any point.
yeah. No, like try to tell me what a nobody is like right now. Like
Like, there is not a single sensible piece of dialogue in the entire Kingdom Hearts saga. Like it's all just like poetic nonsense out of everybody's mouths for hours and hours.
and we love it, like
Oh
it's
yeah.
we fucking love it. Um, but now I guess I should ask, when did you really start making music? Like, yeah, because like yeah, yeah,
When I was around 18, yeah, it would have been when I was around 18 and I started like really trying to teach myself how to produce, which I think was pretty much all I was doing for a few years. And then eventually I picked songwriting back up once I felt like I was in a decent place with production. And it kind of just went from there.
right. Yeah, because from what I understand, you kind of started out making beats, and I was going back and listening to some of your earlier stuff, at least the stuff I was able to find on, at least the stuff I was able to find on Spotify, and I just loved I could like I could just tell that you had an ear that went beyond just like making a beat, like
Mm.
there was definitely more to it than just that. Like it felt they all feel like all that early stuff feels so intricate, you know, and
That's good because I probably wouldn't say that if I listened back. So it's nice to hear it from somebody else.
yeah, nah, I get it. We never think that about our early work, you know, there's so few people that I've met who are also creative in some way who would give themselves that type of credit working so young, you know. But like, but you know, just like what, so like you mentioned, you said that you kind of you said that you taught yourself production. Like, how long did that take you? And like, yeah, like how long did that take you? And when what like when you started collaborating with other people, was there ever a point where you felt like ready to do that, or did it just happen? Like,
I've never felt ready to do anything that I've ever done, ever.
it's a good
Um,
answer. It's a good answer.
I also don't think I know how to answer like how long it took me to learn to produce because I'm still very much learning to produce. Um, how long did it take before I felt like I made anything good? Maybe a year or so. But the stuff that I thought was good when I was making it after that year, I definitely don't think it's good now. Which brings me back to just that I feel like I'm still learning.
Right. Which is, also a great answer, because we're all always still learning, like there's never a period, or at least there shouldn't be a period of time where it's like, yeah, I got nothing else to know about this. I know everything, Um and was like, were you playing instruments at this time, or were you just like
Not
solely
really.
taking? Okay.
It was mostly samples. I also was doing like some amount of like writing chord progressions with synths and stuff.
Right.
But it took me getting back into piano lessons. I either in 2019 or 2020 to really like start playing piano closer to like how I play it today. Um, I picked up bass in 2017. That's piano is technically first, but that's like the first instrument that I feel like I really incorporated into my production and like compositional practice
Hmm.
in a real way. And I like was playing it live because I was playing with a band at the time.
Right.
Um, so it's kind of just been like curiosity leads me to pick up a certain thing, which leads to another thing, which leads to another thing. But yeah, it's been like mostly self-taught with like stretches of lessons here and there.
Right. And when would you say you first started incorporating instruments into what you do?
That would have been, yeah, that would have been around 2017 when I picked up bass.
Hmm. So, like you look at earlier projects, like the stuff you were doing with Illidel and Garrett Odom. Like, was that all sample based, or was there actual instruments in there too?
That's all sample based.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and like it's crazy because I was listening to both those projects earlier today, and really thinking to myself, like I couldn't I like the best stuff of that variety makes it really hard for me to tell sometimes, like whether it's all sample based, or if it's like
Mm.
samples and instruments, or if it's all instruments. Like obviously there's great music made through all three methods, but like I always but like the stuff that really lingers in my brain is always like, is this all samples? Like, is this all it? Like it's the same way I felt about Red Veil's project, Learn to Swim, because like that's
Mhm.
like about half and half, because he plays a lot of piano on it. But like I always get caught up in just like I like listening to something like like all of your work, but like those early projects specifically. I
Mhm.
always get caught up in like picking them apart piece by piece and trying to like deconstruct it and then put it back together like a puzzle. Like that's just kind of the way my brain works, and that's just how I process music. But yeah, I just think there's really something to it, that it sounds that like it's all sample based, but like I said, like you had that ear already to like It
Mm,
just feels very intricate to me listening to it. I
I
don't know.
appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. I like it. I'm having I feel like I'm having a hard time really communicating myself
No,
right
no,
now.
no. The way you're communicating is great. I totally get what you're saying.
I appreciate that. But like, but then you go from those earlier projects over to you go over to like Love Suite, which I was also running through today earlier, and just like, I guess like for you, like going from making stuff that was purely sample based to incorporating live instruments to or yeah, just to like incorporating live instruments and using them in all these various ways. Like, have you like as you started incorporating different stuff into your production process, have you noticed any similarities and differences between, or really just similarities between, like, sampling to make beats versus using instruments to create? What are the similarities between those two things? I don't know why I'm so tongue tied right now, but like, has there? Yeah,
For
yeah,
me, similarities are primarily like I realized the things that I liked in samples are the same things that I look for when I'm composing, which is like a certain like emotional quality of like progression of music, or like I really like when like drums and bass interact in a certain way, or I really like when chord progressions have like a certain kind of tension or like a certain kind of relationship to the melody. So like there's a through line between the stuff I write and the stuff that I was probably choosing to sample in that sense.
right. And I think I'm really glad you said that, because I think there's two songs in particular that I think really hit that middle ground for me. One of them is Love Suite #1 from Love Suite, and the other one is Freedom Facade from Onwards. Like, those two songs to me really like hit that sweet spot between something that's purely sampled and something that's made with all live or not live production, but just like instruments, like, or like traditional. Because I mean, like, obviously, like, a sampler is an instrument in and of itself, but like, there's just something about that middle ground of like, this sounds like it was made from one thing versus it sounds like it was made from another. Like, listening to like the way that you looped Freedom Facade into itself, like, I like that's what I'm talking about. Like, that's just like, it's just like, as rap fans, really as music fans, but as rap fans specifically, like, just like that, the idea of the loop, I feel like, has broken all of our brains. Like, it's just about finding that really good part of a song and just playing it over and over and over again. That's like a foundational aspect for so many of us. And to hear you communicate that through the piano and what I think sounds like a hi-hat, like, the way that you did it on that song really speaks to me. And
What's
I
funny is
think
Freedom Facade is completely a sample.
stop. I'm mad. That's funny.
Yeah,
Um
it's just a sample chop. Um, and I like sequenced it in a way where I was kind of focusing on it's it is that like hi-hat pulse where it falls in the same beat every place where I've chopped a sample that makes it feel really fluid. So it's cool that it's not obvious that it's a sample because of that. But I was trying to like capture what like a very natural flow of it, so it felt like something being played.
right.
Um, but yeah, that's very much a sample.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, no, you fooled me. That's crazy, cuz I grew up playing piano, and like, I could kind of, you mentioned the natural flow, like, I feel that in the keys, like, especially near the end, like at the breakdown. But like, you really fooled me, because like, it was like the whole time, I thought it all wasn't samples, and just like, that's what I mean, you know, like this, just like that's one of those songs that really digs into my head and really makes me think about like not just whether or not this is sampled, but like why does it sound like it's sampled? Like what does it mean for something to sound like it's sampled? You know, like just like really it just really makes me think on top of just enjoying it and just kind of like I said before, just like being centered by it, you know, like it's that's a really cozy song, you know, like that really does sound like you're curled up by the fire with like a warm drink and some headphones. And like for me, I'm gonna have a Switch on me. I'm gonna have my Nintendo Switch on me, and just like that's that kind of comfort song for me. You
Mhm.
know, even though it's called Freedom Facade and it makes me feel comfortable. So the irony is kind of crazy, but you know, like yeah. Um, so talk to me about Onwards and like where did this start? And it really, because like this project to me really does feel like a culmination of everything you've been working towards. And like this feels like, hey, like, I mean, like you've been here for a while, but this is like oh, I can do this too. Like where did where did this start? Where did the idea come from? And what does Onwards mean to you?
Um, it started as well. There's like two parts to the story. The record was originally going to be two separate EPs, which would have been the real, like one of which would have been just like the heavily sampled stuff, or I shouldn't say EPs, but like projects. One of these projects started with me getting a 404 in 2020, and I was like just listening to tons of stuff and just like recording loops of anything that I found that I really liked. And I had this idea early on into like the Bandcamp Friday cycle that I was going to take one weekend and just lock myself in the studio and like grab, like spend one day just filling my SP up with stuff and like loops and stuff, and then spend the next day just like writing and recording to those things and just like release a mixtape of like what came out of that for a Bandcamp Friday. That did not end up happening because I am not a fast writer. I don't know who I was fooling thinking I was going to do that, but I did compile a lot of the stuff that ended up being on the album in that weekend. And it just took me a long time to write to it. And then the other thing would have been like the stuff that I was working on with Raj, which is like all of the stuff that he co-produced, like that's more instrumental based, like more instrumentation composition or whatever. Alex and Errol, who run Touching Base, asked me to send them what I had been working on, because we had just been keeping in touch for a while. Like we hadn't decided to work on a project just yet, but so I sent them like both folders of things that were like the songs that I'd started writing from like those like sample ideas, and then the songs that I had been working on with Raj. And they came back and were like, this is all really good. And then when I told them that I'd actually been thinking of it as separate things, they're like, oh, we had listened to everything as one thing. And like, have you considered like presenting it as one cohesive thing? And I was like, no. And then I went and I listened to all of it together myself. And I was like, oh, like actually like this makes total sense. So from that point, I kind of started thinking about like what the through lines were and what, you know, what I was writing about and what I could continue to write about. And it went from there. Um, the project overall is really just about, you know, having a relationship to the past, really kind of like flattening the concepts of like past, present, and future into like, in reality, these things all are deeply related to each other and not like disparate elements. And like, you know, the art and writing of the past being continually relevant and offering like continuing insight towards the future, and like embracing all of that and like using it as like a framework for navigating life, the world, ideas, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, because as I've been listening to this project, the one thing I keep on coming back to is time as a flat circle, you know, and like and like I feel like that's a phrase it's become more prevalent, you know, like post COVID, just trying to like process everything we've been through, but like it really makes you think, like, what does it mean that time is a flat circle? And I think everything that you just said is like the actual definition of what time as a flat circle means, is that, you know, like the past, the present, and the future are all in conversation with each other, and we move regardless. We have to move, you know, like we're here. So we have to, whatever movement means, you know, like it can mean, yeah, it can mean a dozen different things. It can mean moving forward. It can mean moving to the side for a little bit. It could just, you know, just like however, because like we move regardless of whether we think we do or not, whether in the physical or metaphysical or literary sense, like we all just move. And I think like onwards is just like, you know, just point A to point B. Time is a flat circle. I don't mean to like flatten out everything you just said,
No, no,
because
it's okay.
I loved that description. But yeah, it's just like, you know, just like the way I also thought it was really interesting that the only I really appreciated how much this project, like all your others, focuses on your voice and your perspective. But I thought it was really cool that the one person you brought in as like a feature was Samira. Samira True. Shout out to Samira.
The
They've been,
greatest.
yeah, the greatest alum of the show, had them on earlier this season. So what was it about Samira that made them the one person whose voice was going to be right next to yours?
I think Samira is one of the most interesting, profound, talented writers that is currently making music. I think that their writing really encapsulates a kind of like deep self-understanding and curiosity, and like a deep like appreciation for poetics and like relationship to language that I really admire and that I aspire towards. Um like if anything, I look up to them as a writer in many ways. So it was kind of like I was just listening through things, and there was one song. The song Repossess was actually a song that I really struggled to write. Um, there are lots of songs that I struggled to write, most of which didn't get written and didn't make it to the project. But this is Repossess was one of those songs, and I was listening through all of these ideas and being like, okay, like what's gonna get finished? Like what can I actually like lean back into and like see to fruition? And I heard that song, and I had the hook written at the time, and I was like, maybe I can like I was like, I feel like Samira might sound really good on this. I'll send it to them just in its current form. And they sent it back with the verse that is the final verse, just already like totally incredible. And that like kind of re-inspired me and like re-centered me like in the ideas and concepts of the song to be able to write what ended up being like the final verse, like to finish the song.
Yeah, it's like I'm happy you use the word recenter, because like that because like that's the second to last song on the project, but it very much feels like a back to earth type of song to
Mm-hmm.
me, if that makes sense. Just in terms of it being like it's almost like maybe reassuring, you know, like Samira's verse is very reassuring to me, and so is yours, you know, like that, yeah, fuck it, it's a reassuring song to me, at least.
Mm-hmm.
um just like at least within the context of the album itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like it's really interesting to me. It's always interesting to hear which songs take the longest to write, because those are usually the ones that wind up feeling the most natural, and that feels like a very natural song, you know, like you know, like especially the way your voice is moving across the hook, like it very much feels like oh, I thought of this in 2 seconds type of thing, you know, like it I like clearly it wasn't, but like it's
No, it
like
was. It was.
it
The
came.
hook is the part that I had written that I like
Oh,
that
okay,
was the
never
first
mind.
thing that I heard and was like, okay, this is good. And I think that was the challenge is sometimes you write a part of the song and it fits perfectly, like you're like, this is exactly what needs to be here. And then you have to keep writing. And so I wrote like three something verses before I got to the last one. None of the verses I had written before the last one were like, they're like, no, this doesn't really fit. Like this doesn't feel natural the way this other part of the thing does.
Hmm. Man, yeah, it's like people, like people don't realize it sometimes, but like especially when it comes to stuff that's sample based and kind of incorporating like 5 or 6 different elements, like like arranging music is like putting a puzzle together, arranging and then you throw in writing on top of that. It's just like, how does this all fit together?
Mm-hmm.
Just like, yeah, like the production, like production software looks like a grid for a reason, like and that's the thing that's really interesting to me about Onwards, especially now that I'm learning just how much of it is samples and how much of it is instruments, or yeah, just how much of it, like just how many different elements went into making Onwards. And it's just it's really enriching, like I just it makes me think about there was one time my dad, my father, I love you dad, he's 77. He was in he sang doo-wop growing up. Like he was like, music has been a part of my life forever. And there was like, he was about 40 years old when rap music first started, right? Like he thought people were having seizures when they were breakdancing on cardboard. Like that's a story he always tells me. But like I play him stuff and he loves a lot of the new things he hears. But like I'll play him some things and he'll like react and be like, yeah, it's cool. But then like I'll play him. I'm trying to remember who I think I played him. I played him an Odyssey song.
Okay.
And he was, and like I love Odyssey. And he was like, this is more, and he was like, this is more like sophisticated than the stuff you play me sometimes. And I'm like, what? I really had to be like, no, that's not how this works. Like this is like making music, like making rap music period is already inherently sophisticated, even if you're just talking about it in its like raw, pure, whatever the fuck all those words mean form. Like it's all about taking different parts and turning it into something new. That's sophisticated, that's hard, that's not easy to do. And it's like hearing Onwards and experiencing it and seeing and like having a better understanding of how all the different parts come together, like because like obviously this isn't like a rap album, like, but there's elements of rap in it, in the way that you made it, and even in the way that you're vocalizing it. But it's just like it sits in its own area that takes from a whole bunch of different things, and that's rap as shit. Like that idea in and of itself is rap, but it's obviously more than that. Like it's rap, it's soul, it's R&B, it's jazz. I'm not gonna list all the genres, but like there's so much in there. And I think about the history of all of this, and it's like, how is that not sophistication? Like that's
Yeah. You know that respectability be having the elders in the chokehold. So,
yeah,
but we know.
yeah, bro. It's just like, yeah, this album made me think about that. This album made me think about that specific conversation that I had. And, just in the sense that like all of this stuff is in conversation. Like every like all the music that we love and consume is like in conversation with each other, and that's what makes it also special to me anyway. Um and I also, you mentioned this way earlier, but I really did want to talk about some of the scoring work you've done,
Hmm.
because I've only had a handful of people on here who've actually done film scoring. So like talk to me about what led you to that decision, and what about that process has been just like what that process has been like for you, kind of moving from what you started with to film scoring, which is not this. I'm like not like so foreign, but like there's like there's definitely differences, you know.
I feel like two things. One of which was just I was really into the idea of seeing the things that I made paired with like visual something, and not in this sense of like making a music video, but things that kind of had their own narrative but like their own narrative that I was complimenting. I think the very first thing I ever was interested in is I really wanted to score a skate film, which is something that I still want to do, but I have a really very specific conceptualization of what it would be, and who knows if it'll ever. Anyway, so I kind of just it kind of just ended up naturally falling into place. I did like a performance on Instagram Live sometime in 2020 or maybe even early last year. And no, it would have been in 2020. And had a director reach out and was just like, hey, I like was randomly in the audience of this performance, and I feel like your music is very cinematic, or like at least what you played was, and would be interested in collaborating, or like have you ever been interested in like scoring? And so it kind of just went like that. And I did a couple of, between then and this year, scored a couple of short films, which have both been like, on the festival circuit this year. And have just finished my third, which I actually got to see screened just last weekend on Sunday as a part of like a film festival that was happening in New York, which was a really cool moment.
Was was that your first time seeing a film you'd scored for, like in that? Wow. How, yeah, tell me about that. Like what was it like seeing that? Because that's so special.
It was really wild. Like it was very surreal. Like, yeah, it just really made the thing feel real. Like, I mean, obviously when you've scored a couple of things and they get accepted to some festivals and stuff, that feels very real also. Like that's like, okay, like there's these things are being recognized. But like seeing it is definitely something else.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Like that's just like especially for it to be your third, and just like you've really, this is, yeah, like that's just a really special moment. Like just to hear about that.
Mhm.
Like for me, it's just like I'm just like happy that you got to experience that in person, because like it's just nice to have that physical moment of
Mhm.
like, damn, like I'm in this place to watch a thing with other people that I contributed to in some way. Like it's like that's the creative process. Like that's a big part of the reason why a lot of us do this, is to kind of, I mean, like it's not the biggest part, but like it's people, we love that, moment. Like that's a special moment, just to be like, this is out in the world and it's a thing I did and I can see it happen, and like see it kind of peel and just expose
Mhm.
the layers in real time. It's good shit. I'm happy you got that. I'm happy you got that.
Yeah, now I'm like I've had a taste of it. I gotta get it again.
Hey man, you already know. Where can people find those, where can people find the three films you scored? I mean, I'm sure the third one's making the rounds right now, but
There, I can give the names of all of them.
cool.
The way film distribution works is really tricky. We could actually have a whole nother very long conversation about that.
Yeah.
But basically, I don't think that any of them are like streaming or like available for watching online as of yet. But they're called Half Day, which is directed by Morgan Matthews, who is currently based in Atlanta. Um, One Magenta Afternoon, which is directed by Vernon Jordan, who is from Philly, and Deprivation, which was directed by Katie Arthur, who is in Brooklyn.
Beautiful. That's, yeah. I haven't seen any of them, not yet anyway, but I really want to. And like when I was doing my research, I saw that I saw that you had composed, and I was just like, wow, like it's because like the whole like cinematic thing. It's something that I try not to tell people that their music sounds cinematic, because it's just like, what does that mean?
It
Like
really do
that's
be like, what does that mean? So I appreciate you.
like it, but like it's like a crutch that I find myself falling on sometimes, just because it's so easy to say that, because like you see it's weird, like like identifiers and all that shit is just really really weird. Like I was having another conversation with I had Flanagan, shout out to Frank, last week, and we were talking about just like what, like you could like he and I had kind of had slightly different feelings on like the whole like underground independent, like like I hate to bring this up, but like lo-fi, like that's, once again, that's a whole other conversation that I've
Or
had plenty of times. But like it's like just identifiers for shit are no one's like I like not everyone is ever gonna come to like a 100% like this is what this is, but it's just interesting to see what people like and what people don't, and how that kind of how that kind of helps or causes the stuff to mutate. I'm always fascinated by that.
I think for me as an artist who's really interested in making expansive work, all like who's interested in making bodies of work that are expansive, but also interested in being expansive as an artist and not really limiting myself to areas of work or disciplines or genres or any stuff everybody says. It has had to I've had to intentionally be like, it's really not my business whether people like or dislike things or how people signify or identify them. Like it's because you can really get lost. Like something I think about a lot is how Toni Morrison said that like the function of racism is distraction, and like you
Yep.
use all your energy trying to like define yourself against this thing. I feel like, and maybe I don't know, this might be controversial, but I feel like it's identification and like contextualization as artists is similar in that I think two things are true. I think that there are tangible material consequences to the way that artists are miscategorized and miscontextualized that affect
Okay.
our careers. And I think that's worth caring about. At the same time, I think it's dangerous to get too invested in being understood or properly contextualized as an artist, because you will spend all of your energy correcting people instead of making your work. So
Yeah, it just kind of comes back to the idea of like you put your art out, and then it's the world's art as much as it is yours. Like people's interpretations are gonna help push that as much as whatever you say about it will.
right.
And that's, that's something that I definitely grapple with. Like as a writer, I definitely grapple with that too. But it's it's like it's always about finding that middle ground of just like like you want to like you want to make sure that you're as understood as you possibly can be, but you don't want to get pigeonholed, you don't want to get misunderstood, because like there's a difference between somebody hearing like onwards and being like, oh, this might not be my thing, versus like somebody like inferring something that like you're like not saying at all, that could be like damaging in some
Right.
way, like just to like go to extremes real quick. Like it's all complicated and difficult, but yeah, and yeah, I also love that Toni Morrison quote. I think about that quote all the time, because the shit really is a distraction. Like like we have to fight it, and it's stuff that like you can't ignore it. Like anybody who tells you that you can ignore it is just like, that's just not reality. But it's not something that you can let completely imprison you either. It's so much. That's our inheritance, I guess. Like
Yes, one of many inheritances.
yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of good, like we're out here, we're thriving, we're beautiful, we're talented, we're all this other shit, but it's That's just that's just what we are. But this has been so great. But my last question for you to wrap this all up, Contour Kari, if your life was a movie, what would it be about?
I don't know. I'm gonna go with one of my flippant answers, which is that it would be about being a real nigga.
Let's go, son.
Beginning and end.
Real niggas do real things, bro.
Slick.
Yo, thank you so much. Like having you like having you here has really been I mean, like every guest I bring on here is a good talker and a good conversationalist, but like you know, like you like this is really, you really made me think, you know, like it's
Hope you thinking about stop watching the Marvel movies.
hey, yeah, it's gonna happen at some point. I'm a creature of habit, but
I feel you.
But not like either way, just like I appreciate you. I appreciate your conversation, and I appreciate the way that you look at things, and this is the reason you're here, you know, like and on top of the fact that I really love your music and I love Onwards, and I'm just happy that I'm just happy it's getting the looks that it deserves, just from not even just from publications, but just from people, you know, like your work deserves to be consumed by people, or maybe consumed is the wrong word, but like
I get what you're trying to say.
Yeah, enjoyed and just like thought about by people, and you know, it's been great to see that. So thank you for being here, and thank you for taking the almost hour and 45 minutes out of your day to talk to me.
Yeah, thank you.
No, absolutely. Thanks for listening. Shout out to y'all for making it this far, and shout out to all the Black people listening too, because y'all really impeccable. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell a friend to come through next time. 1.